Joining me right now, two Democratic members of Congress. Congressman Philemon Vela, he is the border town of Brownsville, outside a converted Walmart that now houses nearly 1,500 immigrant children. He's about to tour that facility. And with me here in New York is Congressman Jerry Nadler. He toured an ICE detention facility in New Jersey just this weekend. Congressman Vela, first to you, some of your colleagues down there, they've met with some resistance getting into some facilities. Do you know what you're going to be able to see today?
Well, behind me is Southwest Keys, which is a contractor with Health and Human Services. Behind us here are about 1,500 unaccompanied minors. About 10% of those kids are the children who have been separated from the families. They operate other shelters down here. And so these 2,000 children who have been separated from their parents are in shelters just like this.
This is your district. Former First Lady Laura Bush, speaking out this morning, says she's a Texas native. She understands the push and pull of illegal immigration, but it's still immoral in her view. Congressman Vela, what do her words mean to you?
Well, what we are seeing in America right now is the American dream turn into an American nightmare for these 2,000 kids and counting, because this is not over yet. The solution here is very simple. The president initiated zero tolerance policy. With a stroke of a pen, he can do away with it. If there was ever a time to put politics aside, this is the time to do it. The idea that in the United States of America in 2018, that the United States government is taking away small children from their parents is just inhumane, it's immoral, that's not who we are about.
Congressman Nadler, you made a surprise visit along with some other members to an ICE detention facility in Elizabeth, New Jersey this weekend. You met with men who've been separated, say they've been separated from their families. What did you learn?
Well, first of all, we learned that we were kept waiting for almost 2 hours. This is a privately run facility, and they couldn't make any decisions about anything until someone from ICE arrived. That doesn't betoken anything good about anything surprising that happens inside if someone gets sick or whatever. But what we learned was we met with a number of the detainees whom we had prior legal authorization from their attorneys to do so, and we heard their stories. We were not able to tour the facility. We were in a tiny interrogation room. And these people, one of them presented himself at the border, at a port of entry, with his child, perfectly legally, and he was then arrested and had his child taken away from him anyway.
So that contradicts directly what the Homeland Security Secretary just said. Go to a port of entry.
Well, first of all, we know that that there are long waiting times of days at a port of entry. Second of all, several ports of entry are just telling people, come again some other time. Don't come here now. Now, people are fleeing violence. These people have been crossing deserts. They've been fleeing violence. They're desperate. You can't just tell them come again and have them camp on the border. So they then cross at a different point. But this fellow had his 12-year-old taken away from him at a point of entry. Another person arrived, and
does he know where?
No, he has no idea where his I forget whether his son or daughter, where his child is, or when or if he'll ever see them again. Another person arrived at the border. And the border patrolman immediately said, "Well, this is not your kid." He says, "Well, I've got the birth certificate. Take a test, blood test, whatever." They said he wasn't the border. Let them go, and they went to sleep. And at 3 in the morning, they came and seized the child, away from in the middle of the night, and he doesn't know where the child. And then he was shipped then from Texas eventually to Elizabeth, and he has no idea where this child is, or when or if he'll ever see the child again.
I've heard a couple things. I've heard multiple things coming out of the White House, right? You've heard from the president on Twitter and in interviews that he hates the idea of separating families.
Then let him stop it.
Lindsey Graham said the same thing. He could do it with a phone call. But the president and the administration and the White House continues to say, Democrats, stop pulling these political stunts of showing up at ICE detention facilities, showing up at the border, come to the table and let's make a deal. I just want to play for you what one White House spokesman, Hogan Gidley, said today. Listen to this, Congressman.
Everyone needs to put down their swords and stop political grandstanding on the in the Democratic Party, getting ready for midterms, and instead focus on actually fixing the problem. Instead of going back to their districts.
Yeah, he's going to tomorrow.
Instead of going back to their districts and basically saying, this is a bad problem, look at these horrible pictures, they could go back to their districts and say, we stood up for you guys and we fixed the problem. But they won't do that because they want to play politics.
Well, that takes nerve. They set up the problem. This problem is entirely an unofficial problem, started in mid-April when Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General, sent a memo for zero-tolerance policy, and they call it a zero-tolerance policy. And he said that we're doing this in order to present, to have a deterrent effect. In other words, we're going to terrorize people. We're going to take their kids away so that other people who are fleeing violence will think twice about coming here. Now, then it's the Democrats' fault because not that we started this policy, the president did this policy, but it's the Democrats' fault because the president then comes and says, okay, if you want me to stop torturing these people, if you want me to stop separating families and taking kids away, then you've got to agree to these other things, these other terrible proposals on immigration. You've got to agree that people who've been waiting legally online to join their brothers or sisters literally in the United States for 20 years get wiped out. You've got to agree to these other $25 billion for the border wall.
Congressman, welcome to Washington. I mean, never let a good crisis go to waste.
No, create a crisis, torture people, and then say we're going to blackmail you to stop it. That's not proper. They're holding these kids hostage. That's not a proper way of negotiating.
What are you going? Are you introducing the companion legislation to Dianne Feinstein's bill?
We will be doing that tomorrow.
And what does it say?
It says you can't separate these kids. It has a number of other provisions, but basically it says you can't separate these kids.
If you get that bill to the floor and there's an amendment for border wall funding, do you back it?
I might back the border wall, but by the way, not in the way that they wanted in the bill, because the border wall that they say in the bill is if any future Congress takes a penny away from the border wall, then everybody who's been waiting. All these dreamers, these DACA kids who've been waiting, it'll take them 23 years to get a path to citizenship, and they can be wiped out depending on the action of a future Congress. That we can't agree with.
Have you talked to the majority? Have you talked to any Republicans about your bill?
They won't talk to us.
Oh, come on.
I'm not, come on. They have been negotiating the Dreamer bill.
You haven't talked to Goodlatte about this?
I've talked to Goodlatte. He won't talk about it. He's got his position. Now, remember what they've been doing. The Republicans have been saying, we want to pass a bill without any Democratic votes. That's why they've been negotiating a bill only within the confines of the Republican conference. We have a bill that could easily pass the House. We get all the Democrats and probably a third of the Republicans. They won't let that to the floor.
Okay, I mean, let us see if this shakes it up with these images continuing to come out. Congressman Vela, just a final question to you. Congressman Will Hurd, Republican congressman, he's opposed to this policy as we're looking at it right now. He suggested this morning, I don't have time to play it, but essentially an alternative to the detention facilities is keep families together, keep them on house arrest until their claims can be dealt with and as policy questions are going on. Would you support that?
Well, I don't think we need house arrest. Under the Obama administration, back in June 2017, they began a program that would essentially allow these families to live together, and they would report back to the asylum courts. When the Trump administration took over, they got rid of that problem, and we never got to see the OIG report. I want to add one thing. You know, we don't need legislation to change what is going on right now. All we need is for the president to rescind the zero-tolerance policy, and these kids can be back with their parents.
That's exactly right. And talk of legislation is, whether it's the border wall or anything else, is just to distract attention from the truth.
You think it's a diversion from the conversation?
It's a total diversion. And you can talk about the border wall. You can talk about even worse provisions that they're trying to put in to stop. They really want to reduce immigration by 50%, to have people who've been...
That's a policy difference. That's a legal immigration policy difference.
Policy differences are legitimate.
You're saying don't do it now.
No, I'm not saying don't do it now. What I'm saying is don't play hostage. Don't hold these kids hostage. Don't hold the DACA dreamers hostage. That's what I'm saying.
With all of the heat that is coming at this administration from, forget heat come from Democrats, from Republicans on this issue, Congressman Nadler, when the images are coming out and it doesn't look like it's going to subside, do you think that the White House can maintain this position for another day?
For another day, yes. For a while,
honestly, I don't know. For
a while, I don't know. I certainly hope not. That will depend to a large extent on Republicans. Democrats can scream all we want, but if the Republicans
you have Republicans that are with you on this.
We do. The question is how many. If enough Republicans come out against it, then they will not be able to sustain this.
Congressman Nadler, thank you so much. Congressman Vela, thank you.